Hey everyone, Jason Fung here, architect working in Toronto. This is a four-part series talking about how to become an architect. This is actually the fourth part, which is beyond the first three is actually how to become a licensed architect. The fourth part is starting your own practice. And I'm still figuring it out. As cool as our space is, I don't really have a formula. I don't know if what we're doing is how the longevity of it, but we're having a lot of fun and I love it. So follow along, enjoy this video, and I will talk about my experience starting my own practice. We are currently at this moment, so I started this practice in 2016, and my theory behind it. So I was working at a great firm, Studio JCI. I'll put a link in the description. Great place. And of course, every place you work at, there's always going to be little things that's like, I wish I could do this or wish I could do that. And there's always, like, every firm. Up to the point where I was like, yeah, you know what? I think I can do this. I want to give it a shot. And it was part of my dream to start a firm, to really do something entrepreneurial, super risky. But then also, what's the point of getting your license if we're not going to do this thing full out kind of thing? So I gave my notice to the firm. They were very gracious about it, and they're like, because every architect that's running their firm, they know how tough it is. So I remember my superiors, they were like, it's tough out there. Good luck. Like, this is, we want to send you off as best as possible. So we had a nice lunch and things like that, and they were so gracious about it. And starting up, to me, it's incredible once you make that decision and you've left a firm to start a practice. Some people think, okay, I'm going to keep working and I'm going to set up shop in the background to figure out how to start a practice. The problem with that is 8-9 hours of your day is stuck doing the work of that firm. So by the time you get home, you are done. You're fried. All you want to do is just watch a sitcom or something and just shut off your brain because you're done. Your mind is mush. But the foresight of that is at least you're making some income while you're setting up things. There is a logic to that. I wasn't as logical about it. I gave my notice, and my first day off, that's when I really jumped into doing the starting up a new firm. The benefit of that, though, is when you have 24 hours to develop on yourself, all of a sudden you build a website in a day and a half. You've got a business plan. You can do all this stuff because you're not bound by the rules of working in a desk job in a normal setting. So you can wake up at 6 a.m. and all of a sudden you could just work on something up until 2 a.m. of the next day. The world is your oyster at that point. And there was something very liberating about leaving the last place I worked, and all of a sudden I was at a coffee shop pounding away at a business plan of figuring out what do I envision for this firm, what am I gonna do, and so that was the starting aspect of it. The other side of things is how do you land clients? And I don't have a magic formula for it. I still don't really know how to outreach to new potential clients. But my thinking was, the first project for the firm needs to have a mission statement or a design thinking that's in line to set up a foundation for this practice. So it was a decision that I made that I'm going to do a renovation on my own house. I'm going to do as much of the build as possible myself. So I also learned that side of construction of toughening my hands. And I did it with my friend, my good friend, who at the time was in a kind of a transition period in his life. We went to architecture school together, and we're like, let's collaborate on this. Let's work together. Largely, it was my design vision, but then working with him, he had some great ideas, and we hashed out an incredible kitchen bathroom renovation as our first project. He also lived it was my family home, and so he lived in the basement. So he was a contractor that was there all the time, and I paid him, of course. He was a laborer basically too. And so it was basically burning through my life savings on the first project at this point. I'd saved up about $80,000 in a pot, and I was burning through that to do this renovation, which is like not a lot of money. I couldn't recommend that to any of my current clients to do a kitchen bathroom for 80 grand. It's not enough at this point, years later now, especially. And especially when you're doing things yourself, there are areas where you can save a lot of money. You know, labor is relatively cheap when you're doing it. So we got to get some really great ideas and also build the connections with trades. So, well, with reps. So buying tile, countertop, cabinetry, all these things. To start up a firm, you're gonna need to reach out for that first project and market yourself shamelessly. On top of that, the first few months of running the practice was going to networking events, getting your name out there, advertising as much as you can, sending out little postcards to friends, family, and largely what I found was being out earlier than most of my colleagues, being out, starting my own practice. There's an aspect of architecture where you're not paid that well. I mean, I was paid fine at the last firm I was at, but even then, it's a far cry from what a lawyer makes that's been working in the field for 15 years or something. Like, it's a far cry from what a doctor makes. It's a far cry from what other professionals make as a living wage. And so what a lot of architects do is they moonlight. So there's a lot of that in this industry where at night they're working on their own personal projects. Whether the firm that they're at full time knows it or not is another story. But there's a lot of moonlighting, and I found being out early, being out on my own earlier than most, I got a lot of projects where friends of mine would be like, I'm moonlighting, I'm doing these projects. I got a house, I can't do it. Like it's one, too big, or I don't have my license, or whatever it is, whatever reason. They're like, Jay, do you want to take it on? And it's like, yeah, I'll take it. And because I had my own shop, all of a sudden I was reeling in projects from old friends of mine from school. So that's another thing is a little pro tip when you're in school, don't make enemies. Like, try your best not to make enemies, because you never know how these paths cross later in the future. In the working world, try not to make as many, like, don't be an asshole. That's what I'm saying. And so, like, in the working world, try to be as diplomatic as possible with your colleagues, because you never know, they might throw you your biggest client down the road. And that's kind of the truth, what happened with me. So, and then there are other people that started firms, and there were like projects that they're like, we just can't take it on. Hey, do you want to be a reference for this potential client? And it's like, yeah, sure. And you land a lot of good projects that way. A lot of starting projects. I went to, not particularly great, but you never know. You never know what that might land. I would say though, if your family has some wealth, my family we're on the upper end of the middle class. I would say we're in the middle class. You know, my parents worked. Well, my father worked a day job. My mom was a stay-at-home mom after she worked a little bit in real estate for a few years, but she wanted to take care of the kids, take care of my sister and I. So, I mean, we weren't tremendously wealthy. I grew up in a suburb, not a monster house in Rosedale or something like that. So we didn't have. I didn't starve. There's not a day in my life where I went hungry. So I lived a pretty good life, you know. And my parents invested a lot of money into sports, into travel. They burned through a lot of what they could have kept for their own retirement on us, on their kids. But we weren't. I would never say that we were wealthy, but we were certainly not poor. If you do have some wealth, if your family has some wealth, maybe your parents are doctors or something, I don't know. Or you have family wealth, like historic family wealth from generations passed on. In general, I think you will have it not necessarily easier, but but slightly easier time starting up a practice. Because all of a sudden, your connected world has some wealth, right? Let's say you grew up in Rosedale or Forest Hill or something like that. Your first few projects might be kitchens for neighbors, and that's very common for starting architects. Is they have family connections or friend connections that are like, oh, we want to do a renovation, blah blah blah, and yeah, we can throw around $200,000 or something. Like they don't really bat an eye at certain figures. Most of my family and friends, that would be a stretch. That would be a long stretch. It's like, I don't have $200,000 to throw at a kitchen. But you never know. So assess where you are in life, because if you do have some family money and you have some family connections, you might be very well positioned to start a firm because your first few projects are almost set. They're ready to go. My first real project on my own was this little addition out in Leslieville, and it's a second story addition. I know the fees were, I think, like $3,000, something like that, for the design, permitting, all that stuff of this little addition. You know, they were wonderful clients. I would consider that a small project, but it was a success. I worked really hard, and the status quo on the street was these second floor additions would always have a step because they're trying to. The existing main floor addition just doesn't allow for a nice kind of level floor on the addition. We got to be level. There's no step, and that's the win. That was the win on that project. Was we got the contractor to build it the way we wanted it, and now they have this wonderful master bedroom, a primary bedroom in the rear of their house that overlooks this green space. And they did it for, I think it was like $65,000, something like that, which is unheard of today. So, and then on top of that is I met this smaller contractor who I use every so often now. Like I give him a call. I'm like, hey, we have these small projects. Are you available? And so great client, you know, tiny budget, but what they've got from me is time. Is I could throw as much time as I want on it because I'm just alone on my own. And then I got to meet a great contractor that was a connection for the next few years, and he's great. So you never know. You never know how you'll land a project. And that one came from a colleague of mine. She also started a firm, but she was based out in Whitby, and this was in Toronto. And she's like, "Hey, I'm on this Facebook group. Someone needs an architect in Toronto. Do you want?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll take it. Like, I'll talk." And again, that was a connection through my past. It's no magical formula on that. Just try to be affable, grow, you know, in your earlier career, and hopefully that pays itself back later on in life. Certainly don't do it just for that reason. It's good to be a good person just to be a good person, but you never know. You never know how those old connections come back and feed back into your life. So money is one thing. It's really tough. I'm still borrowing money to run the business, and I'm in year 6 now. It is really hard, and running payroll is always tough. Every month is a stretch. And at this juncture where I'm at currently, I think I don't see how to make money in this business, but there are some really cool projects coming out of the firm. So if that is the final resolution, if I'm on my deathbed and we are broken even, or even there's still some debt or something like that, but we've had this body of work that has contributed to society in a great way, I think that's a win. I think that's success. If there's also profit and the firm is continuing and there's a good succession plan, and we're still doing, the company is still doing great things into the world and it's totally sustainable, that's just, icing on the cake. So that's my hopes and dreams for the firm. I haven't really figured out how to profit, but that comes later. We're working on our processes, we're working on our techniques, we're getting our expertise. Like the team is getting better and better at what they do. And in theory, the money will come later. So that's a bit about the practice. I was fortunate enough. There was an old high school friend of mine he was an entrepreneur, started his own thing in analytics in that space. And when I started out, I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I started this firm. Like, would you mind to meet? And he was very gracious. He's like, yeah, let's go to Whataburger and have breakfast kind of thing and just talk. And it was such a nice, like, he spent a good half an hour, an hour with me, and we just talked. And of course, we're in different spaces of entrepreneurship. But he said this really good thing about, he's like, the challenges just get tougher. Like, each challenge, it's tougher and tougher, but you figure it out along the way. So one of them is like, how do you hire your first staff? And figuring that out, like, oh, you have to deal with taxes, you payroll, like all this stuff, human resources. How do you deal with that one staff member, that first staff member? And you get through it. You figure it out, get through it. Then all of a sudden, the next time you hire a staff member, it's like, oh, that's easy. I have the 4 things I need to do. Boom, it's done. But then the challenges get harder. All of a sudden, it's like, how do you set up vacation time? Or how do you set up software and computers? And like, the challenges get tougher and tougher, but you figure it out. And all of a sudden, it's just in your back pocket. You know how to do it. And so at this point, most things are figured out in terms of how to onboard people or software stuff, like those aspects of things. They're figured out now, and it's efficient. But it took a process. It took such a process to get here, to know how to do this. And if you approach it that way, I think that's the right way to approach it. It's a process. Things are not figured out, and walk this path. You've chosen to walk this path, and you make decisions, and they might veer you off, but at the same time, you're still trying to move forwards. In Ontario, there are these grants. So each province might have a different form of this. But at the time, back in 2016, there was a grant program called Starter Company in Ontario, administered by each municipality. Luckily, where my family home was, it's a smaller municipality, so the openings were easier to get into. If you were based solely in Toronto, it's hard. It's a tough market. Everyone is trying to get in. So if you live out in, I don't know, Stouffville or something, you might have a better shot at this grant if it still exists. But they offered $5,000 as a grant, but the deal is you have to attend these business courses, and then for 6 months you have to report to a mentor, a business mentor. That's not in architecture. This is like just entrepreneurship. And that was such a great program. Like, such a great program, because I don't know how to bookkeep. I don't know what SEO means. I don't know, like, all this stuff. I don't know how to do taxes. I don't know how to market. I don't know how to do advertising, all this stuff. And they would go through it in a very cursory way. It's like, it's not super in depth, but at least you get introduced to the idea that it's like, oh, I have to track my receipts. I have to track my mileage. I have to incorporate. I have to, like, all these things. You get really good advice from people that have walked this path. And then you get some money. So that paid for the first computer. Like, that money was so valuable as early capital to start things up. And then the mentorship for the next 6 months was such a great program, because it's like, you sit down for an hour every month, and it's like, so what's going on? What's going on with your business? And it's like, oh, right now I'm trying to figure out how to go to site and do this thing, blah, blah. And then they would give you advice and be like, you know what, you need to hire a drafts person. Whether you take that advice or not is another story, but you're talking to someone, and they're trying to problem solve the issues from an arm's reach. So they have a clear mind on it. It's not, when you're running the business, you are deep in the depths of it. You don't see things for what they are. You're in the trenches. And so yeah, that was a really great thing. So look out for that in your province. There's got to be something, because that's investment from the province to kickstart small businesses. It's in their benefit to support small businesses, because in the end, I mean, now I pay so much tax back to the government. They're getting their money back in spades. So yeah, that's one aspect of things. Another is, like, for architects, keep in touch with your professors, keep in touch with your old former principal architects that you worked under or friends, and have the humility to ask for advice or to ask, what's it like, or is this worth it, kind of thing. And you never know. And have an open mind. I think that's it for now in terms of running a business. I mean, good luck out there. If you are looking to leave the firm that you're at to run your own firm, it is hard. It is extremely hard. I don't recommend it for everyone. You have to be very social. You have to be open to talking to people. And the first few months for me, because I didn't have staff, it was just me. The tough thing was during the day, you're answering the calls, you're marketing, you're trying to get your name out there, you're going to networking events, you're answering the city for permits that you've submitted, whatever it is. During the day, from 9 to 6, you are running the business side of things, and then from 6 o'clock all the way to the next morning, you get the time to draft, design something. So you're not sleeping. The first few months, it was like so hard to keep up because you can't be drafting during the day. You're either driving or you're on the phone or you're doing something else, and the moment you get the quiet, that's in the evening. And so bear that in mind, is like it's so tough, but totally worth it. Like, it's hard for me to go back to working under someone else. I will try my best to keep this going up afloat and doing great things in the world. We want to design great things for people that they love. So thanks for tuning in. That's it for this one. I hope this 4-part series was fruitful for you. I really enjoyed speaking my thoughts on the matter. There's not a lot that I could find online, so I think this is valuable information for anyone looking to become an architect, who is an architect, who might be considering a different job opportunity or something. I don't know. Whatever it is, this 4-part series has been great. I'll catch you on the next one. And yeah, feel free to post in comments what you want me to talk about. Any topic that you're like, oh, I'd love to hear about this. Let me know. Thanks again, and see you on the next one. Cheers.